College graduates are becoming the newest face of long-term unemployment. Brian Kilmeade of Fox News Channel apologizes after a shocking on-air remark about homeless people. China's trade machine keeps humming while U.S. soybean farmers face devastating losses. Joe Biden, the former U.S. president, struggles to cash in after the presidency, falling far behind the Obamas and the Clintons. And Donald Trump sues the New York Times for $15 billion, calling it one of the, quote, worst and most degenerate newspapers. All that and more today. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Okay, welcome. So glad you could be here with us today. My name is TJ Walker. This is Filtered with TJ Walker. And we look at the top stories of the day, the top business stories, technology stories, as well as culture stories, and then analyze them through the lens, through the filter of communication skills and personal development skills. My promise to you is this: spend a little time with us right here. You'll learn more about the world, but you'll also learn more about yourself and how to improve yourself to be more successful in your professional life as well as your personal life. So let's dive right into story one. The newest face of long-term unemployment. For decades, long-term unemployment mostly hit workers without college degrees. Now that's changing. According to the New York Times, nearly 1/3 of people jobless for more than 6 months have college degrees, up from just 1/5 a decade ago. Sean Whitmire, who holds 2 master's degrees, says, quote, "I can't even work at the little board game store down the street." Another applicant, Katie Gallagher, wrote, "The stress of rejection is unbearable. I have never felt depression like this before in my life." She has applied to more than 3,000 jobs. Economists point to a mix of automation, artificial intelligence, and shrinking demand for white-collar roles. Harvard's Lawrence Katz noted, "There were big advances in AI starting around 2016. The result is that highly educated workers, once insulated, are now finding themselves squeezed out, with some resorting to gig work, borrowing from family, or starting side businesses just to hang on." Okay, a lot to unpack here. What's the real message here when it comes to rising unemployment of recent college graduates? Having a piece of paper no longer means anything. The only thing that matters is, can you deliver value to the workplace? Sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear. Sorry if that's not comfortable. So before you graduate from college, you need to take a crash course in entrepreneurialism, because the big job at Google or Goldman Sachs might not come. Stop looking down your nose at gig work and realize there's nothing wrong with building your own business from day one. And then if you get a job, great. But stop spending hour after hour after hour sending out emails, sending out resume. Start talking to real people and selling your services. Let's dig a little deeper here. I'm a little troubled by some of the things that I just shared with you in that particular news read there. The idea that someone with 2 master's degrees claims they can't even get a job at a store. Well, why would a store selling games care about your master's degrees? Maybe you don't even put that on your resume. Just say, "Hey, I'm here to work. I'm here to do some work. Can I help you?" Might be a better attitude. Because one of the problems I have noticed, I'm sure you have from time to time, is that people start getting degrees, especially a master's degree or 2, especially if it's from a prestigious college. They all of a sudden think of themselves as too good to do most jobs. I got to tell you, I had to eat humble pie. When I was almost 40 years old, I had businesses go belly up, websites go belly up. I had about $400 in my bank account, and I had a magna cum laude degree from Duke. Guess what? Nobody cared. I was almost 40 years old. I had to go ask for temp work. I'll never forget one time I was applying to do some kind of office work. They made me do a test on whether I could use Excel spreadsheets. I thought, well, this is This is no problem. I'm skilled at that. I flunked the test. So shame on me. I didn't keep my skills up to date on that. So my real lesson to you is not to beat you up and make you feel bad if you are a young college graduate and you can't get a job, but to realize the world has changed. When I was graduating from college, it wasn't really an issue. This was way back in 1985. And yeah, that makes me a boomer. Sorry, get over it. In 1985, the question really for most people was not, are you going to get a job? It was, are you going to get the job you want in the city you want? I certainly didn't really feel any pressure. It's not that I had tons of job offers, but I knew I wanted to work in New York City, and I got a job offer, a paid internship, really, and then went from there to another job and another job. Well, those days are gone. I'm sorry. Is it fair? No. Is it what you were promised? No. Is it the real world? Why, yes, it is. Because here's the issue. Companies can get artificial intelligence to do a lot of basic jobs, certainly programming jobs. They don't need to have someone who's just young showing up saying, teach me everything. Because good old ChatGPT or whatever AI system you want is all ready to learn it instantly. And it doesn't need a coffee break or vacation break or any other coddling. So you're going to have to provide more value right out of the gate. Now, again, I mean no disrespect to this woman, but Katie Gallagher says she's applied to 3,000 jobs and is a recent college graduate. My question to Katie, and I may be wrong, and she may have a good answer for this. How many people have you met face to face? How many people have you called up and said, can I come pick your brain and have coffee with you? How many companies have you done solid research on, followed all the top leaders on LinkedIn and X and made thoughtful comments to them and asked them after hundreds of engagements, would they have 5 minutes for you for a quick introductory meeting just to find out about their company? So my guess is that has not happened. Again, I could be wrong. But we live in an era where everyone thinks, and we're all spoiled. I'm spoiled. I want something, I go to Amazon, click. I don't have to go to the mall and spend 5 hours shopping anymore. That's work. I'd rather sit in my pajamas, do a click on Amazon and get what I want. Well, that works for me as a consumer. But if you're trying to get a job, it's not that easy. And it really never was. If you are a young college graduate or any kind of person looking for a job, my advice to you is don't spend more than about 5% of your time emailing resumes. Spend the rest of your time trying to meet people in real life. Go to professional networking events. Go to meetups. Connect with people on LinkedIn. Make real comments about their posts and ask them real questions about their companies and their industries. You need human relationships. Even a company like Google that does post job openings and has tens of thousands of applicants for every job, their own research shows the vast majority of anyone they hire had some sort of internal connection. Does that mean, oh, life is unfair and it's not what you know, it's who you know? What you know affects who you know. If you actually know the way the world works, you don't spend your time emailing resumes. You spend your time trying to make actual human connection. So these days with LinkedIn, with X, with other social media platforms, you can start to form some kind of a relationship with everybody in an industry you want to enter, with the top CEOs. And in the vast majority of industries, where the thought leaders have podcasts and post columns on LinkedIn, they don't really have that much of an audience. So if you just show up, make thoughtful comments, not, hey, can I have a job? But if you just make thoughtful comments and you do that routinely, maybe a couple times a week for a month, you start to become well known. They will eventually respond to a question you have, maybe even a request to be linked to someone else in their industry, perhaps the head of HR, and to find out more about job opportunities. So Sean Whitmire, according to the story, jobless for 18 months, turned to game design. Well, that's good. Why didn't you do that day one? I guess is my question. If you're graduating from college tomorrow, then for the last year, what have you been doing? You knew this day was coming. I urge everyone these days to have a 2-track system for getting income. One of them, yes, apply for jobs, regular jobs, big company jobs, great. But the other one is start your own gig. Start your own business. It cannot hurt you in the long run, even if you get the dream job at Goldman Sachs or Google or whatever your idea of a dream job is. Start a side business where you are marketing your service or your product. If you make squishy dolls or you make a video game, start selling your services. It will be extraordinarily helpful to you, regardless of where you are in your career. And there's just no downside. There's a huge, huge downside to putting all your eggs in the basket of, I'm going to get a traditional job where I show up at the office and everything is handed to me, and I punch a clock and I go in at 9, I leave at 5 or maybe at 9 p.m. and I get the benefits and the vacation and the healthcare and all that. Yeah, it would be nice. If you can get that, fine. Spend some time looking for that, but you've got to have a plan B because life is unfair. Chances are you're not a boomer like me. You've got to deal with reality as it exists in 2025 if you are unemployed or underemployed. And that means do not spend all of your time click, send the resume. That should be no more than about 5% of your time. Let's look at a couple more facts on this issue. Nearly 26% of unemployed Americans are long-term jobless, highest in 3+ years. So again, I'm sympathetic, but in these days of being able to drive Uber and food delivery systems and putting yourself on Fiverr to sell a gig, to me, that's inexplicable. There was no Fiverr when I was young. There was no Uber. There was no gig economy. And yes, for most people, working in the gig economy is not a great deal. Doesn't mean it can't be a good deal for you. Doesn't mean it can't make your job search much more relaxing and pleasurable because you got steady income. If nothing else, it can get you out of the house quite often. So stop looking down your nose at gig work and realize there's no one riding in on a big horse to save you from really any political party who's just going to say, hey, let's go back to where things were. You paid your dues, you studied hard, you got your A's, even though everyone in your college probably got A's, and now you deserve a job. Sorry, it just doesn't work that way. So please realize nobody cares about your career as much as you do. And yes, you very well may want a job, but more broadly, you want income, you want a career, you want to use your talents to help people and make money for the lifestyle you want. That may or may not include a job. It may include you starting your own business and really doing things right out of the gate that work well for you without the traditional corporate job. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want more? Grab my 5-book success library for $9.95 at tjwalker.com/books. It's the fastest way to level up your communication. Imagine being the most confident person in the room, whether you're on Zoom or on stage. That's what thousands of professionals are learning to do right now through my online communication courses. At Media Training Worldwide, you can access my complete training library on demand, affordable, and actually effective. Whether you're preparing for media interviews, client presentations, or TED-style talks, I've got you covered. Check it out, MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. You'll never wing it again. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Welcome back to Filter with TJ Walker. I'm your host. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're going to dive right into issue 2. Fox host apologizes after callous on-air remark. Fox News host Brian Kilmeade sparked outrage after suggesting, quote, involuntary lethal injection for homeless people with mental illness. On Fox and Friends, he bluntly said, just kill them. Days later, Kilmeade apologized, saying, quote, I wrongfully said they should get lethal injections. I apologize for that extremely callous remark. He added, I am obviously aware that not all mentally ill homeless people act as the perpetrator did in North Carolina, and that so many homeless people deserve our empathy and compassion. The backlash highlights how one offhand remark can snowball in today's media environment. Fox has not publicly commented, but pressure on the network continues. Okay. So what's the real message here? Brian Kilmeade said you should just kill them, talking about homeless people. Inject them lethally, kill them. But he then apologized, and he did a pretty good apology. My prediction, he's not going to suffer any repercussions at Fox News, nor should he, given the fact that he owned up to making a mistake. He admitted he was callous. He admitted it was wrong for him to say, and he apologized. That is what you want when someone calls for death. You don't necessarily have to end every career. Let's dig a little deeper here. I do think context is important. We are living in a time now when commentators, I would say all across the spectrum, but it's really only one part of the spectrum, are losing their jobs, not for calling for the killing people. We're seeing commentators losing their jobs because they say, here's a guy over here who was killed. I appall his killing. I am appalled by anyone who would do that. We shouldn't have any violence. But now let's look at the career of this guy and what he said and all the messages of hate he spread. And before we canonize the guy, those people are having their careers ruined. Those people are being canceled. And yet not Brian. Now, I'm not asking for Brian Kilmeade to be fired. Now, full disclosure, Brian and I are not friends, but I've met him numerous times when I was on the set of Fox News Channel. And yes, I'm a sensible centrist, and I've appeared on Fox hundreds of times, and MSNBC at least 100 times, and CNN and Bloomberg, you name it. I've done communications analysis on these networks. And Brian always struck me as someone who's not particularly ideological. When you see him portrayed on Saturday Night Live, they always portray him as sort of a dim bulb and sort of an ignorant moron. I don't think he's an ignorant moron. I don't think he's a raging intellectual, but I don't think he's a moron. And he certainly has a long and successful and wildly lucrative career. He's fabulously rich. I'm not saying that is the measure of someone's career or that you deserve a pass for that. But he's also held the same job since 1998. So he's going into nearly 30 years in the same job. So he has a tremendous work ethic, and got to get up pretty early in the morning to do the morning show. Plus he's hosting all sorts of radio shows and podcasts and authoring, or at least co-authoring, books that reach the bestseller status. And he's not someone I see as routinely spewing hate, although this idea, he did literally say, kill him. I dare say if any host on another network of a different ideological position said, kill him, and referred not to homeless, but to a political group more in favor by those at the channel where Mr. Kilmeade works, that person would be fired within about 5 minutes. Before the next commercial break, they would have been escorted out of the building. So, it's a double standard. It's unfair. I'm not calling for Brian to lose his job, nor do I think he will. Because it's one thing you could say about Fox is they're very, very loyal to people. Until you get to the point where you're really causing hundreds of millions of dollars of damage, like a Bill O'Reilly or a Tucker Carlson, then they're very loyal and they stand by you, which is one reason why their audience is very loyal to them as well. Lots more to come today. Stay tuned. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm TJ Walker. This is where we look at the top business, technology, economic issues of the day, filtered through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. Issue 3, China's trade workaround meets America's soybean pain. China's exports to the United States are down about 15% lately, but its global surplus is, get ready for this, bigger than ever, widening to nearly $786 billion. Beijing has offset U.S. tariffs by flooding markets in Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia with electric vehicles, solar panels, and more. But China has retaliated in ways that sting. It temporarily halted exports of rare earth magnets critical for cars, drones, and missiles, and boycotted U.S. soybeans, devastating farmers. In North Dakota, the Gackle family projects a $400,000 loss this year. Farmer Justin Sherlock warned, quote, "Are we going to lose a generation of farmers because of the trade war? I think that's what's approaching." Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is leading negotiations, owns millions in North Dakota farmland, raising concerns about conflict of interest. So, well, I don't think many people in Washington these days think about conflict of interest. But what's the real message here? Soybean farmers in America are being destroyed by the tariffs against China because China is saying, all right, you don't buy from us, we don't buy from you. So we're seeing farmers, perhaps generations of farmers, who are going to see their livelihoods destroyed. And it just goes to show conservatives were right. Conservatives, libertarian economic thinkers have been telling us for years, things like tariffs always have unintended consequences. They muck up things over here, even though you're looking up here. When big government decides it knows more than the free market system, all sorts of unintended consequences are occurring. And one of them right now is China is selling more to the world than ever because the United States has become a pariah state in the eyes of many former trading partners around the world. And China is picking up the pieces. Again, they are up 15% in their exports around the world. They're making money hand over fist. Meanwhile, American farmers who are used to selling soybeans to China are in a grim position. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. Let's look at some of the facts. So as I mentioned to you, China exports up 15% this year to date, up 15%. Global surplus, $785 billion through August. That's up a lot more from where they were a year ago. They're using their rare earth leverage. China produces 80% of magnets and 100% of certain types of minerals, and they're keeping that more to themselves. China buys 60% of the global supply of soybeans. So when all of a sudden they say, America, we don't need you, it hurts. It really hurts Midwestern farmers. And this is according to the Wall Street Journal. This is not some, left-wing hackery. This is according to the Wall Street Journal and other reputable sources. Some individual farmers are losing as much as $400,000 a year. And according to Bill Wilson, an official in North Dakota, I've never seen as monumental a disruption in agriculture. This is the real problem with giving tons and tons of power that traditionally in a free market system, as we used to be, was in the hands of individual consumers, individual farmers, individual business owners. It was diffuse. It's not that any one farmer is so much smarter than the president of the United States. That's not the issue. No one's contending that. The issue is power used to be diffuse, spread across people in an entire industry, the consumers, the stakeholders, the creators, the owners. No one person could just all of a sudden destroy a market. Now we're going in the other direction. If you followed all the history of Cuba's economy in the latter part of the 20th century, and even today, not a pretty picture. Not a lot of rich people there. Not a thriving upper middle class. Not a lot of people with great careers, great income, vacationing around the world and saying, hey, come to Cuba and let us host you. You didn't see a lot of that because power was invested in one person, Fidel Castro. And now, unfortunately, whether your model is Fidel Castro, whether it is a dear leader of North Korea, whether it is Viktor Orban in Hungary, whether it is the great leader in Venezuela, or for that matter, Turkey, we are seeing more and more people around the world saying, this whole free market thing, this democracy thing, overrated. Let's give our dear leader unmitigated power to do whatever they want. And we are seeing the consequences. So the good farmers of North Dakota, maybe you need to ask who you're voting for and if they're actually supporting your own economic interest, because right now it's looking pretty grim for a lot of different players in our economy as this whole thing shifts out. It's looking great for China. So if your number one concern is helping China, you got to be very happy with these tariffs the United States has imposed, because China is up hundreds of billions of dollars this year alone. They're selling more to the rest of the world than what they are buying, and it's helping China. So if you love helping China more than Americans, then by all means, continue to support these tariffs, because they're doing a great job, at least for some people. Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Issue 4 today, Biden's post White House money struggles, relatively speaking. Joe Biden's post-presidency is proving lean compared to his peers. According to the Wall Street Journal, he has secured a $10 million book deal. So let's not pass the tin cup for him yet. He earns between $300,000 and $500,000 per speech and collects about $416,000 a year in pensions. But debts on his Rehoboth Beach house, rising property taxes, and Hunter Biden's legal bills weigh heavily. Contrast this with Barack and Michelle Obama, who landed a $60 million book deal, not 10, but $60 million. They signed a $50 to $65 million Netflix contract and now command $400,000 to $600,000 per speech each, and they're getting a lot of requests. Their net worth is estimated at over $130 million. Bill and Hillary Clinton amassed more than $240 million in income from speeches, books, and consulting since 2001, with a current net worth around $120 million. Biden, meanwhile, faces slow fundraising for a presidential center in Delaware and fewer corporate suitors due to his age, unpopularity, and Trump's shadow over would-be donors. Okay, so what's the real message here? Not all celebrities, not all former presidents are the same. Yes, the Obamas have cashed in and made hundreds of millions of dollars, as have the Clintons. But Joe Biden making a fortune as a professional public speaker, not so much of a good idea. It's not working. The days of instantly getting $100 million the first couple of years after leaving the White House are over. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. Again, I don't want to feel too sorry for him. He is getting some speaking gigs, although I got to tell you, I'm not a Biden hater. But if I were going to an annual national real estate convention in Las Vegas, and they told me, hey, this year the big speaker is Joe Biden, I just can't imagine anyone saying, oh, well, now I'm definitely going. Wasn't sure if I was going and paying the $2,000 fee. Now I'm definitely going. Because that is why people, big trade associations, organizations, conferences, pay these large sums of money for famous people. It draws people in who want to hear from them. And the problem for Biden, and to his credit, he's been on the national stage now for more than half of a century. So I think a lot of people feel like, you know what? I think I get what he's about. I've heard him talk. I don't really need more. So he's not getting these gigantic $60 million book deals the way Obama's did. Now, Obama did serve a successful two-term presidency. Biden, obviously, a little different outcome. The other issue is just the age. I mean, Obama was a very young man comparatively when he left the White House. Still trim, vigorous, full of energy. His voice still sounds the same. So it's not surprising that he's in huge, huge demand and quite popular. Not the same with Biden. Now, let's look at this historically. There was a time when former presidents and their spouses had no pension. You had Truman leaving office and was broke. Lincoln's widow faced massive debt. Grant basically had to write his autobiography. So I don't really want to go back to those days, nor do I think we're going to. President Reagan really sort of broke new ground. He was the first president who really cashed in a big way. Yes, I understand. Lyndon Johnson cashed in sort of slimy ways by getting himself ownership for TV stations. Okay, so we're bipartisan here. Kennedy obviously, did not have a post-presidency. Reagan was really the first one who sort of cashed in the modern presidency because he got some six-figure speaking deals for speaking in Japan, and it blew people away. These days, a president getting $100,000 for a speech, people would be like, wow, That's so little. He must be giving them a charitable discount. But in 1989, when Ronald Reagan was no longer president and was getting these deals to speak to Japanese, it was unprecedented. No one had ever heard of something like that before. These days, whether you're a former sitcom star, reality star, comedian who said something controversial, it's comparatively, nothing's easy, but it's comparatively never been easier to monetize fame. And presidents, no matter how much you don't like them, no matter how much you might think they are a failed presidency, they're famous and they have lots of opportunities for monetization. Let's assume for a moment that Joe Biden never gets another paid speaking gig. If you just look at the money he gets from his book deal, you put $10 million in a low-cost index fund, for your kids, your grandkids, you don't touch it. Well, in 30 years, you're talking about, it could be $250 million or more. So that is generational wealth right there. So let's not feel too sorry for Joe Biden. And his pension, his government pension, is more than $400,000. Now, let's keep in mind, he has been in public office for nearly half a century. So you could arguably make the case he paid for that. But a lot of people, maybe even you, have worked for a long time, and you're not getting a $400,000 a year salary. Now, as a former president, there are a lot of other perks. A lot of your staff, your security. Well, I hope his security is paid for. You never know with the current administration of who they might try to take security away from. But it is law that former presidents have a security detail as long as they live. I certainly hope that continues. So again, he's well in the top 1% in terms of net worth and income at this point. So let's not pass the tin cup. Let's not start a crowdsourcing or a Kickstarter for former President Obama. But it is interesting seeing the differences. And we didn't mention about President George W. Bush, who did for a while make a lot of money as a speaker, but also had one huge windfall when he was cut into a deal because of his name with a baseball team. And he got, I believe, in excess of $20 million before he really started his political career. So if he has had any kind of sound investment there, I would, again, this is not fact-based. I'm just extrapolating off of what any prudent manager would do. George W. Bush should have a net worth of $100 million if he prudently invests his windfall from when he sold his baseball team. So when you have money like that, I don't think he's interested in flying around the country giving a speech to the National Chamber of Commerce meeting in Naples, Florida. It's just not how he wants to spend his time. He wants to spend his time painting, spending time with his grandkids, presumably. So anyway, I wish a long, healthy life to all of our former presidents and that they enjoy their retirement years in a way President Carter did, who did pass away at age 100 and had such an extraordinary career, not really devoted to making money in his post-presidency, but devoted to other policy matters and philanthropic activities. Back in a moment with our final segment. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs, but the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, confidently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. Welcome back. Issue 5. Trump sues the New York Times for $15 billion, not million dollars, for $15 billion. President Donald Trump is escalating his war with the media, filing a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times. In a late-night Truth Social post, he wrote in full, "Today, I have the great honor of bringing in a $15 billion defamation and libel lawsuit against the New York Times, one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of our country, becoming a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. I view it as the single largest illegal campaign contribution ever," in all caps. Their endorsement of Kamala Harris was actually put dead center on the front page of the New York Times, something heretofore unheard of. The Times, and it goes on. You can look it up. I can't really bear to go through the whole thing. So let's dive into this. What's the real message of Donald Trump suing the New York Times for $15 billion? It's not because he expects to get a penny from that. It's not because there's a single shred of evidence in his favor. It's about intimidation. Donald Trump is sending a message to smaller media organizations, ones that don't have the deep pockets of a New York Times. If you criticize me at all, I will try to put you out of business, whether it's the Department of Justice or with frivolous lawsuits. I will bleed you to death. So be careful. Let's dig a little deeper. That is what I think is the true message. Now, fortunately for the Times, they've got some insulation. They are not one of these gigantic media companies that's constantly trying to acquire movie studios and every TV network in the world. So they don't really have to worry about getting approval from any regulatory agency in the Trump administration. They're publicly traded, but they are still largely controlled by the family that founded it, the Ox-Sulzberger family. They have what's called the Class B shares that give it disproportionate voting power. So they are not easily intimidated. What's interesting, I guess it's not even interesting. It's typical of Trump. Doesn't actually state any facts. He doesn't like the fact that the New York Times put an editorial endorsement on its front page. Okay, guess what? There's no law against that. That's not defamation. Other newspapers have done it. Many that have endorsed him have done it. So there's nothing particularly illegal or libelous or defamatory about putting an editorial on it. What Trump is really saying is he doesn't like any media organization that presents facts. He wants media organizations to simply project his vision of reality that makes him look good. I mean, let's not forget, Trump isn't even that big a fan of Fox News half the time. He's only happy if you are 100% saying what he wants to hear. He really liked when Fox News said, hey, there's a lot of voter fraud and these voting machines didn't really work right. And you know what? Trump probably did get more votes in 2020. That's what made him happy. That's really the only thing that's going to make him happy. And the problem is, if you were a journalist, you didn't go into that business saying to yourself, when there's a conflict between what the facts say and what dear leader says, I want to print what dear leader says and ignore the facts. You just simply don't go into the craft of journalism for that. That's a marketing craft. That's a propaganda craft, but it's not a journalism craft. So again, short-term significance of this, it's going to be laughed out of court, even a Trump court. And there's simply no way, I believe, even as craven as our court system is today, even with a Supreme Court filled with as many MAGA henchmen as our current Supreme Court has, they're not going to force the New York Times to pay $15 billion or any money to Trump, in my view. Now, people say, well, TJ, CBS just gave him $16 million. Yeah, CBS did it because they were, whether you call it a bribe or extortion, they were hoping to get regulatory deals passed for mergers so they could line their pockets more. So they said, let's swallow our journalistic pride. Let's do what it takes to appease dear leader so we can make more money. The people at the New York Times, they already got a lot of money and they're not trying to merge more. So that's why I think they are a lot less susceptible. But here's where the problem is. There are tons of newspapers in America that are hanging by on a thread. Second-tier markets. Well, for that matter, some first-tier markets, Los Angeles and Chicago, the newspapers are not particularly profitable. But when you go down to markets, let's say that from 100 to the top 10, those 90 cities, the newspapers in those towns are not doing very well. So they see something like this, and they're going to check. They're going to start looking over their shoulder, thinking, do we really have to run another article critical of this administration? What if they sue us for $15 billion? Sure, we would win in court, but we don't have enough money to put enough attorneys on retainer for the next 10 years. So we got to start playing it safe. And that's the real danger. And I believe that was the intended message here. This administration is sending a message to media around the country. You want to play it safe? No criticism of this administration. No criticism of its people, of its values, of its policies. No pointing out inconsistencies. No pointing out hypocrisies. Otherwise, we will, in fact, come to get you. That is what I believe is the real purpose of this, what otherwise would be considered frivolous litigation. Now, am I saying the Times is perfect? No, they make mistakes. There's no such thing as a journalistic organization in the history of the world that hasn't made factual errors. Do I believe the New York Times has journalists who have political opinions? Absolutely. Do I think most of the political reporters and hard news reporters personally dislike the current administration? Absolutely. But do I think they get up in the morning thinking, how do I distort, skew, and make up facts to defame someone I politically don't like? No. The same cannot be said at a lot of so-called journalists at Breitbart and Fox News and Newsmax and a lot of other organizations that call themselves journalistic organizations, but you already know the result of every single story they do. It's how can we make a liberal or a Democrat or a centrist look awful? And it is simply not the agenda of the New York Times to make their ideological enemies look awful. And if you doubt me, ask Hillary Clinton how many stories there were about her email scandal versus all the lawsuits against Trump in 2016. And she'll tell you, yeah, she thinks the New York Times has a real bias against her and her family. And on that, I happen to agree. Okay, that concludes our big stories of the day. Let's step back a minute. It's time for the grab bag section of the show. And that's where we try to look at other issues that maybe are not dominating the headlines and sometimes delve into specifically more issues that relate to personal development and communication skills to help us. Now, there's been a lot of tension in the news lately, what with assassinations and all that. I'm not the first person to make this recommendation, but I want to amplify it. There have been a number of commentators across the spectrum that says, hey, temperatures are getting higher and higher in the United States. Tensions are rising. Why don't we all take a moment, step back, unplug? Why don't we get off social media? And I realize the irony there of here I am talking to you on social media. I'm talking to you on TikTok and Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitch and Instagram right now. So I'm essentially biting the hand that's feeding me, but I do think it's important for your own mental sanity, for our national sanity, but also for your personal sanity, to spend even more time unplugged. I'll tell you my own practices. What I try to do each day is to go for a walk each day for at least 1 hour, not with my phone off, not with the ringer off, but literally leaving the phone home. I started that practice about 8 years ago, and I have to tell you, that was probably the best decision I ever made for my own bank account. You may be thinking, oh, TJ, what are you talking about? How do you make money leaving your cell phone at home going for a walk when you should be working? What if somebody needs to get a hold of you? What if a client needs to reach you? Guess what? I'm not that important. And unless you are the only emergency room surgeon in your small town, and if people don't get a hold of you right away, somebody died, you're not that important. You can, in fact, unplug throughout the day. You can do it. So here's why it helped me. By putting my phone away, I could actually think my own thoughts. I could be reflective. I would often walk with a pad and a pen. Yeah, these things still exist. If you're listening on a podcast, I'm holding up a very simple, I guess 2.5 by 4-inch notepad and a pen. I can go for a walk. An idea comes to my head about a new course I can create, a new topic for a show, a new idea for a digital clone. I can think my own thoughts, reflect on it, and write it down. The beauty of a pen and paper is the paper is not all of a sudden going to shout back with a hyperlink to some story that's 10,000 times more interesting where I got to click on it and get myself angry. Cell phones do that. The other thing I do is I do not bring a cell phone into my bedroom. It's much, much better for sleep. I don't have to get disruption. Well, TJ, what if it's important? Someone has to get a hold of you in the middle of the night. A family member is going to die. I have a landline for that. Only family members have the number. So I can be, and it costs almost nothing these days. If you can afford a cell phone, you can probably afford a landline too. So leave your cell phone out of your bedroom. The quality of your sleep will go up. Well, but TJ, I use my alarm clock on my phone. How will I get it? Buy an alarm clock for $7. You can get one on Amazon for almost no money. I use a good old-fashioned digital alarm clock. I think it costs about $7. You can do that too. Now, here's where it gets a little trickier. I try to turn off my cell phone a good 2 hours before I want to fall asleep. So if I want to fall asleep at 9:30, I try to turn off my cell phone by 7:30 p.m. This allows me to get more relaxed, to think about bigger issues. I typically read a book that is looking at some bigger issue. I would like to say and tell you I read more fiction, but I do read mostly nonfiction. But I'm not reading about what happened today in the news. And I do read on a Kindle. I recommend paper books, but also I think the Kindle Paperwhite is great. I don't even know how to connect to the internet or look up something on ChatGPT. Maybe there's a way. But what I like about reading on a Kindle is I can lower the light levels to the point where there's less light going in my brain than even a dim reading light. So it does not stimulate your brain, and it doesn't tell your brain, hey, it's morning, wake up, because there's so little light coming in. And there's something about reading. It is active for the brain, but it's also relaxing too. It's not this bombardment of ads popping up and, oh, here's this politician I hate, and here's a new scandal that he's in that may destroy his life. Let me click on that. That's what you get when you're in bed staring at your cell phone. And these days, we're seeing more and more people getting angrier and angrier and angrier and talk about civil war. Yes, a prominent member of the United States Congress just yesterday said, we're going to have to break apart America into two Americas. There's a part of me that does see the logic of that. The problem is, of course, there's not a clear delineation of everyone in this state is one party and everyone in another. We're all living together and mixed up together. So it's not an easy solution. My point here is let's all spend a little less time constantly seeking out confirmation bias, constantly seeking out more information online, proving again that these people I hate are even more detestable than I thought yesterday. Because if we're honest with ourselves, that is what a lot of us do. Now, you have your own political opinions. I have my opinions. But first and foremost, I'm a sensible centrist. I'm trying to look at objective reality, filter it through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills to make you more successful. That's my number one bias. I hope you have a bias in favor of seeking truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it makes somebody you normally like, normally respect, normally vote for, look bad. Because if you're not willing to do that, at some level, you're shedding your humanity and you're really just becoming almost like an animal that reacts. Here's food, like here's pain, run away. We're not animals. We are human beings. There is a higher level of living for all of us. And I do think staring at your cell phone all day long is one way to bring you down. Now, I do have my cell phone in this room right now because I'm streaming on it on TikTok. It's my only way of reaching my friends on TikTok. But I'm not actively checking email. I'm not actively looking at Facebook. Who retweeted my post on Twitter? How many likes did I get on my Facebook? Do I do some of that? Sure. But I would highly, highly recommend you look at how much screen time you're spending and actively schedule time to be away from cell phones and all screens. It's one reason why I love playing pickleball. Oh, well, TJ, I get my exercise. The problem with just saying I'm going to exercise is you can be on a treadmill and you're scrolling one nasty story after another, after another, after another. One more story to get you outraged. So yeah, you got your heart rate up, better than just sitting and scrolling, but nowhere near as good as actually playing a game and sweating. And that's what I love about pickleball. You may say, oh, that's some old geezer boomer sport. Okay, play your own sport. Play soccer, play tennis, play padel. I don't care what you play, but I want you to play something where it's not possible to be staring at your cell phone most of the time. And that's the problem with a game like golf is, yeah, you swing, you're not looking at that second, but then when you're in the golf cart, you can be doom scrolling the whole time. You want to play golf, but try to find sometime every day where your phone is off because you've gone for a walk to think for yourself. Some time of the day where your phone is off because you're playing a sport or doing some exercise where your phone is not bombarding you with other people's ideas. Take your phone off, turn it off when you're going to sleep. And this may even be the most important thing. Turn off your phone a couple hours before you want to fall asleep. Enter that sleep stage relaxed, thinking about your thoughts about how you want to make tomorrow a better day for yourself, your family, maybe your community, your customers. Think about that rather than how outraged you are by something you just saw on your phone. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. It's a lot of fun to do this every day. We come to you every single day right here on this channel, whichever channel you got. If you got anything out of it, please leave a comment, leave a review. If you can sign up for a subscription, please do so. And please tell your friends. Come back tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye.